I decided to log in slightly early in case there were any technical problems, and perhaps I could try to get them resolved in case they come up. First of all, can everyone hear me? Go ahead and post in the questions and answers section under the Patreon portion. Hopefully, some of the folks on the server are listening at the moment. And just please post if you can hear me. Or if you can't. Excellent. Thank you, Warhawk. Okay. So it's just about time to get started. I'm going to give everybody about 1 minute. Quick warning, I am feeling a little bit under the weather. It's possible that I may have to step away for a second at some point during this. I certainly hope not, but if that is to happen, then I will run a little bit late to make up for that. But in any event, it looks like things are all, yes, the guy, that is correct. We are talking on this server, the questions and answers, not the server where it's questions and answers, vote for topic, or the general chat, or anything along those lines. Just so everybody is clear on that, it is the questions and answers under the Patreon server on Discord. And for those of you in the audience who have no idea what I'm talking about, I apologize. And I appreciate all of you showing up to watch. Thank you so much. So as you may have seen from the final decision that was made from the vote amongst our Patreon supporters, today we're going to be talking about international cooperation in the exploration of the solar system. And the reason that this is a topic that I put as an option for people to vote on is the fact that there are a ton of space agencies on the planet. However, there are precious few that have actually sent people into orbit. Now, obviously, it costs a lot of money to do this sort of thing. However, at the same time, I mean, the European Union does have a heck of a lot of money, and yet they've never really made any effort to send humans into space. Instead, their emphasis has mostly been on robots, orbiters. The Mars Express has done a wonderful job, by the way. It's my favorite orbiter around Mars. Provides some magnificent pictures, that sort of thing. But still, when it comes down to it, it's just the United States and the Russians and the Chinese, and to a very limited extent, India. And apparently they're going to be doing a little bit more. But still, there's a lot of other nations with a lot of revenue behind them that have yet to put anybody into space, and instead, kind of send their folks along with us. And by us, I mean, the United States, the Russians, etc. Not as much, obviously, with the Chinese. The Chinese seem to be kind of going their own way. So, having said all of that, I want to be clear that I'm not being critical. I'm more actually kind of confused. Is it a better idea for us to kind of let one or two space agencies take the lead on this, and everybody else just kind of, contribute their own portion? Or is it good for other space agencies to have their own manned exploration program, their own astronaut training, that sort of thing? That's one of many things. Also want to discuss, in the future, are we even going to be able to cooperate? Obviously, we've been able to do a lot on the ISS. However, as far as Russian participation is concerned, it's starting to taper off. The Russians are starting to express a lot of discontent. This is probably because they no longer have a complete monopoly on transporting humans to the ISS like they've enjoyed for the last 10 years. So now they're going to lose a lot of revenue as a result of that. And there's, of course, the political tensions that exist between the rest of the, well, at least the European Union and the United States and Russia. That is starting to boil over, I think. Not necessarily between cosmonauts and astronauts. These people still get along really well. It's the governments and the influence that they're starting to have on their space agencies, I think, that's starting to cause some problems. And this is beginning to concern me. My next video is going to be sort of about this because the Russians have stepped up their plans to send a lander to the south pole of the moon, just like the Chinese have there, just like the United States is planning to go there. And I can't help but wonder if we're looking at three competing bases on the south pole of the moon. And the tensions potentially that could represent, depending on what these three space agencies want to do on the moon. And that concerns me. I would rather to see, obviously, nations collaborate rather than compete. But, we humans don't seem to have a very good track record of collaborating. At the same time, on the ISS, we've done a hell of a job for 2 decades. So in any event, Warhawk just brought something up. That would be like Antarctica. And yes, let's indeed hope that that's exactly what it's like. Antarctica, of course, is divided up by treaty in terms of who gets to put bases where. It's strictly adhered to. So hopefully that's, that would be the intention. If that happens, I would be all for it. Although, I'd be more thrilled if we would have exchanges between these bases. Sometimes, excuse me, mouth gets dry pretty often. Sometimes we have taikonauts coming over, and some folks probably strongly disagree with me on this because they'll think that the taikonauts will steal technology the moment they show up, and maybe they would. It's hard to say. But in any event, taikonauts sometimes coming over to, say, the Roscosmos station or or coming over to the NASA station, or there would be an ESA station maybe, or perhaps a combination of all of them, and that's just starting off with the moon. Comment just made from another space nut, Falcon 9 is the king of trampolines. Yes, indeed it is. The Russians had a lot of fun at United States expense talking about using trampolines to get to the ISS. And I have to admit, some folks may be annoyed by this, but they had a real point for a while. The U.S. had no way of getting to low Earth orbit for almost a decade, which was humiliating for, as an American, myself, to know that my space agency could not get humans into space and instead had to ride Russian rockets. I don't actually really hold it too much against them that they had some fun at our expense, but now I guess we're getting our revenge. Now the Russians are feeling the pinch of no longer having a monopoly on this for as many years as they did, and this is really going to impact their funding, and this is not making them angry. Guy just brought up a fact of a Guy MF4, by the way. I'm not sure how you want to be referred to as, but don't forget Japan. They landed on an asteroid. That is pretty cool. Yes, indeed. Not only did they land on an asteroid, they're doing a sample return, and that's exciting as all get out. Although when I think about, okay, it's going to be Guy. However, at the same time, being a big fan of the Andromeda strain, it kind of scares me a little bit as to what they might be bringing back, and who knows? People have talked about something living, possibly existing on asteroids. So we better be very careful with whatever samples we bring back. Regardless. Okay, a question is asked, they still have not launched a person yet, talking about Japan. That's true. They have yet to launch anybody into space, nor do they have any intentions of doing so, as far as I know. They've sent people into space to the ISS, but that's been riding other people's rockets. And Japan certainly has the financial wherewithal, at least as much as the Russians do, to send people into space. They're just not doing it. And this isn't necessarily a criticism. It's more that I'm confused. They can help with space robotics eventually. Yeah. Oh, well, the Japanese have produced incredible numbers of technological breakthroughs. They can contribute immensely to all of this. And JAXA, as their space agency is called, has already committed to the Lunar Gateway. They want to be a part of that. They're very excited about contributing to that. So the Lunar Gateway appears to be developing as an ISS around the moon. And as it grows, and I think that it's going to grow, NASA has expressed in their most recent plans of Moon to Mars, as they call it, and I just had a couple of episodes about this, that they do intend to increase the size of the Lunar Gateway, including a propellant depot for deep space exploration, which I always hoped was their intention, but now they've made it official. So in any event, I think the Lunar Gateway has a huge opportunity. However, the Russians look like they may be backing out of that because of the current tensions, which is troubling, which is unfortunate, because the Russians have more hours in space than anybody. Their cosmonauts have spent more time in space on long-term endurance missions than anybody else. They have a huge amount of experience in working in space with life support equipment, with emergencies, as happened on one of their Salyut space stations that had a nasty fire that very well should have killed both of the cosmonauts on board. And yet, through their ingenuity, they were able to save both of them. This was when they were still the USSR. So I'd say this without any hesitation. The Russians are pretty good at what they do. And to lose them as a partner, I think is going to be a diminishment for the Lunar Gateway and for a collaborative effort going to the moon. And instead having them as competitors, I think, is going to be unfortunate if that's what it turns out to be. Alien Zookeeper, I'm less worried about it in the near term. It's competition and redundancy. 3 is better than 1. If 1 has a meteor strike or a vital equipment failure. That's a very good point. I haven't even thought of that. If we have 3 bases, something happens to one of them, at least we still have a presence on the moon. And not only that, if we have 3 bases on the moon and one of them is lost, whoever loses the base is still going to be strongly incented to get a base back there. Otherwise, they're going to be the ones with no base on the moon. So yeah, that's a very good point, Alien Zookeeper. Seeker of Knowledge says, well, as long as there is nationalism, there will be us versus them attitude, like cops versus the people. There will be conflict, as Elon said, at a Starfleet Academy is what is needed. Yeah, there's always going to be competition, and I have no problem with friendly competition, some sort of rivalry or, between football teams or something like that. It's when that competition potentially gets turns into a shooting war, that concerns me. And I have to say, and I know a lot of you disagree with me on this, that militarizing the Starship, in my opinion, has the potential of doing this. Not saying we shouldn't do it, but at the same time, creating a combat-capable spaceship, something that's capable of fighting in space, sets a precedent to where everybody else is going to copy it. They're going to create either their own combat spacecraft or something that's capable of shooting it down. And that's the sort of thing that concerns me a little bit. I do think that a combat-capable starship would be very useful in terms of rapidly deploying lots of soldiers to troubled hotspots in the third world or something like that. As long as we're really, really clear that that's all we're using it for, as more of a transport, than a combat ship. So, well, it's crazy to say, says a guy, the governments are actual budget limited compared to what the market can raise in capital. I think it will be corporate dominant unless they tap their military budgets. I think you're right. And there are a lot of corporations that are venturing into space. The vast majority of those, however, seem to be American, but there are exceptions. Of course, Scotland, I learned recently, has their own initiative going on, which is pretty exciting. I'm actually in contact with the gentleman that designed their mission patch, and I intend to start promoting his artwork here on this channel. So I'm very excited about that. And I guess I kind of jumped the gun on that a little bit, but nevertheless, it's what I want to do because this is a very talented person. So in any event, Earth-to-Earth starships full of troops would give the USA the ability to go to war globally in under an hour. That is true. That is very true. And so, the question is going to arise, possibly, depending on how paranoid our rivals are, and the Russians do have a history of extreme paranoia. They may say, what's going to happen if the U.S. decides to drop one of these starships, on one of our bases, or where Putin happens to be, on a particular date or something like that. We need to come up with a way of shooting this thing down in case it becomes a problem, those sorts of things. The Russians have been like that in the past. They tend to be quite paranoid. For example, the United States pulling out of the ABM treaty and coming up with missile defense systems. The Russians were very clear on what they were going to do if the United States did that, and they started and they came up with hypersonic ICBMs that are capable of evading U.S. Missile defenses. And then since then, Putin has also shown demonstrations on how they would use those to blast the United States, which I find to be extremely disturbing to just be openly talking about nuking the U.S. That's a step that's very troubling and something that I haven't seen since the time of the Soviet Union. I hope Warhawk says, I hope we realize it's hard enough to survive out there without shooting at one another. You're right, Warhawk. War in space would be a bloody and awful affair with a very high casualty rate. The types of weapons would probably be something similar to kinetic projectors, electromagnetic-driven projectiles that would rip through starship hulls, decompressing them, that sort of thing, ripping through spacesuits, people dying awful deaths once their spacesuits are compromised. That's not a fun war at all. And I certainly hope that it doesn't come down to that. Alien Zookeeper, what about India and Japan? What if Japan and the UAE continue cooperation on Mars? Yeah, well, the UAE seems to be very interested in establishing a base on Mars within 100 years. I think they have a very clear plan in mind as to what that's all about. Their oil is not going to last forever. However, there's a tremendous amount of resources in the asteroid belt, which a base on Mars would be able to take advantage of. That would possibly, I mean, I've talked about 16 Psyche a number of times and the incredible wealth that's there. I would not put it past the UAE to want to exploit the wealth that's there and make that the replacement for oil. I think they're looking ahead, far ahead, and I may be wrong about this, but I think they're quite clever. And I think they're coming up with a really interesting plan for economic exploitation of the asteroid belt. Once again, I could be dead wrong about that, but it makes a lot of sense to me. The spread of nuclear weapons, tech, warships could create a new kind of space race. Yeah, that's true. It would be a new kind of space race. There'd be a lot of technology developed out of it. There's no question about that. World War II created a massive amount of new technologies. However, it also created an unprecedented number of body bags. And I would really hope that something like another World War II doesn't take place, regardless of the technological advances that happen as a result of it. I wish we could advance in a technological way without fighting each other. But, you know, historically, we've shown that we're not very good at that. Alien Zookeeper, India also has South Polar ambitions. Are they involved in the Gateway? The answer to that is yes. India has expressed an interest in being involved in the Gateway. They haven't specifically said what they want to do, but they want to do something. They want some sort of involvement there and not to be excluded. And I say more power to them. You know, going to the South Pole, wow, India, I think, would be hard pressed to do a manned mission. But at the, you know, given their economic situation, but at the same time, who knows? Who knows what they could pull off? Isn't Russian paranoia a result of us in terms of aggression, says another space nut. The Russians would definitely argue that. The Russians would say that the whole reason that they started a nuclear race with us is because we dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Now, I'm not going to express my own personal opinions on that one because that's going to create a firestorm. Instead, I'm just going to say what we say and what the Russians say. The Russians claim that us dropping those bombs started the whole thing, whereas, we claim that it was absolutely necessary to end the war, and we never had any designs on blasting the Soviet Union. We were never going to do that. Now, once again, who knows who's really right there? I'm not going to take a position one way or another on that one. Do you think that was a camera or? I'm sorry, I'm starting to run behind here. Doggone it, I'm talking too much. Dan Bam Bam, interesting. I don't think I've ever seen you here before. Thank you for participating. Do you think that was a camera or was Russia flexing and tracking the USA satellite? I have a hard time coming to conclusions about that. I don't put anything past the Russians in terms of their capabilities. I think that a lot of nations have made the mistake of underestimating the Russians, and I think it's always a bad idea to underestimate them. So I would say that if they had any capabilities that we think they may have, I would say there's a good chance that they do have them, and perhaps even more than that we don't know about. When information was released, by the way, when the Soviet Union fell, we discovered that they were testing their ICBMs in an insulated facility in Moscow that nobody could hear. They were doing static fires of rockets inside a building, and nobody could hear it. And we had no idea whatsoever that the Russians were doing this. And that is something else. And we didn't know. We thought they were testing it someplace else until that information was released after the fall of the USSR. Yes, the Indian Space Agency is also planning their own low Earth orbit space station, and I say more power to them. The more space stations we have up there, the better. The more our presence in the cosmos, the better. As long as we play nice, is how I feel. Okay. Okay. Bullets fire in space. Guy, I didn't quite understand the comment, but in any event, oops, a post just came up. Bear with me for just 1 second. Missiles, yes, missiles do work in space, says Seeker of Knowledge, likely to be something that we end up using. I do think kinetic penetrators are a likely weapon just because it's very tough to avoid such things because it's tough to change course in space. Once you're going in one direction, redirecting to another location is difficult. Why would anyone want to fight in space? How would you clean up the debris? That's very true. If we fight in low Earth orbit, it's going to be a disaster. We're going to be knocking down satellites like crazy, including our own, if we fire anything up there. So yeah, I would say fighting in space, assuming it happens, would be reserved for something further out. And I'm hoping it doesn't happen at all. And yeah, it would be tough to clean up the debris. It would prevent us from launching. Seeker of Knowledge, however, does point out that during war, they don't think about the debris. It's not part of the mindset. You know, that's true. During our tests and the Russians' tests of nuclear weapons, both we and the Soviet Union exposed our own people to radiation in order to have the edge in the nuclear race, at least during the 50s and beyond. So yeah, you know, we're willing to pretty much do whatever it takes to maintain the edge in many cases. And Dan Bam Bam says, weapons in space make me sad. Me too. Me too. I don't want it. I really don't. It may be inevitable. Things like The Expanse suggest that it's inevitable. I certainly hope not. Wasn't it China that blew up that satellite in orbit? Didn't it send a ton of debris all over the place? Yes, that's true. But Trumps, however, they are not the only ones to test anti-sat weapons. But nevertheless, yeah, it's anti-sat weapons are something that a lot of people have used, although the Chinese test was especially destructive in terms of scattering debris. But you know, they're not the only culprits. A lot of folks have tested those. Okay, someone wants to know. If she should put walnuts in the chocolate chip cookies. I'm not a big fan of walnuts, to answer your question. Okay, no need for rail guns was the point, says Guy. Yeah, that's true. We don't necessarily need them. However, they're already being developed, and boy, we love our toys, don't we? I just tend to feel that we're going to end up using them, or at least trying to use them to see if they're any more effective. Okay, let's see. Ricker, I don't believe I've seen your partnership. I agree, he says. The Cosmonauts partnership has been great to continue American interest in many recent space experiments since the shuttle loss. It would be awesome to see a next chapter of the U.S. and cosmonauts to team up, to somehow see Elon do after the Tesla pickup, a Tesla Falcon and other partner Russia effort to develop a Tesla space tugboat like vehicle to very gently accelerate and relocate the ISS to new usefulness in halo moon orbit service or something similar. Yeah, I think, there are so many things that the Russians and NASA and the Russians and everybody else can do in conjunction. The Russians did a lot when it came to building the ISS. Their cosmonauts were extremely active in the construction of it. So in any event, yeah, that's what I would prefer. I would prefer to see cosmonauts collaborating with the United States rather than any other way. To unite mankind, there would almost have to be an outside threat that would unite mankind, says Seeker of Knowledge. Yeah, it could be. I certainly hope not. I don't see there being an alien threat, but there could be. There's a number of hotly debated motivations that aliens might have for being a threat. But nevertheless, it does seem to be pretty unlikely that we're going to encounter that. Do you think directed energy weapons with enough energy from a suitable reactor would be a better space weapon, says Framrick? There's a lot of debate about that kind of thing, but we've talked about particle beams and lasers and that sort of thing. Any of these things have the potential of being dangerous if they can rip through the hulls of spaceships and expose them to vacuum. Could ice be a better weapon in space, damaging a device? Those sorts of things. Yeah, there's a million ways for us to kill each other out there. And perhaps actually I'm going to do something about space war at some point in the future. That's not strictly the topic, even though I guess perhaps it is kind of connected. But nevertheless, I guess what I'm looking at is, one of the questions is, should we have international collaboration, and what forms should that take? Was a good part. Although, we have a lot of time, so we might end up talking about that as well. So I'd be interested to see some contributions on that as well. Okay, by the way, we've had some downloads and such that have been posted, mostly art and that sort of thing. And that'll be available post any downloads that we do or links, that sort of thing, are available afterwards. Framrick, do you think a successor to the ISS involving more nations is likely? Yes, I talked about this before. I think that it will happen. What I'm concerned about is that the Russians are not going to be involved. That bothers me. But it looks likely that we're not going to that the Russians may not be involved in what's going on the moon. Tom, here and listening at work, what do you think of a new sort of space alliance between India, Australia, South Korea, Japan, UK, EU? At least to get a functional moon base, to start mining the moon and get off of our dependencies for other countries for our rare earths and such. Hell yeah. Honestly, I think that all of these other nations that we're talking about should have their own manned program and should not be dependent on NASA or Roscosmos for getting people into space, because who knows when these agencies cut their budgets. It happens all the time. So why not have your own program? And then these programs can collaborate. But yes, Tom, I totally agree. I think that's a really good idea. Okay. Dan Bam Bam, no weapons are needed. Space is hard enough. I agree. Space is going to be incredibly dangerous and challenging for us to be a part of, and I think that we need to stay away from it. Okay, Juan Lawson. Yeah, I remember you from last week. Threats from the outside may come from Mother Nature as opposed to alien intelligent life. Very good point. Maybe that's where efforts could be directed. I really hope that we do not get into space warfare. It would set us back with the amounts of debris. I agree with you, Juan. And the threat could be from asteroids, that sort of thing, I think is what you're getting at. And I think you're absolutely right. In an international collaboration to deal with the threat of asteroids is in everybody's interest, absolutely everybody. And somebody I think just made a comment about how asteroids could be used as weapons too. Yeah, they could, although you'd have to be really careful about how you use them. They'd have to be pretty small in order to make sure that you don't end up with an explosion that's going to cause problems with your own country. Okay, if Starship lowers the cost to orbit to less than $200 per kilogram, do you think multinational orbital factories and space-based solar power is more likely, says Framrick? Absolutely. The Starship is a game changer in every respect, and I think that it should be made available to a lot of space agencies, maybe for a good amount of money. But nevertheless, yeah, taking a lot of stuff to orbit, everything that you've just talked about. Again, to repeat, multinational orbital factories and space-based solar power, very likely if we can have the Starship and its capabilities. Another space note said it would save people from storing 3,000 tons of ammonium nitrate in stupid places. Yeah, well, that's a little off topic, and I'm not even sure what YouTube's policy is about us talking about that. So I think I'm going to avoid that particular one, aside from saying that for the people who have been affected by that, I'm thinking of you, and I hope all of us are. It's a huge, huge tragedy. That was unnecessary. An explosion to the equivalent of a tactical thermonuclear device. So in any event, that's not something I'd want to go off in my city. So in any event, I'm not sure stupidity will stop at the Kármán line, says Framrick. I hope so, though. Yeah, I tend to agree. Seeker of Knowledge says multinational corporations will build huge space industrial complexes. Excuse me. Let's hope they do. Let's hope that they invest in that. It's going to take one to really push forward with doing that before the rest jump into it. It's a lot of money up front. However, the Starship will make it a lot more affordable. But thus far, companies, they so short-sighted. They look at something that's going to provide a return on investment in just a couple of years, which a space industry is never going to do that. They need to be looking at the long term. Okay, so would mining space junk in low Earth orbit be a good way to go? Saves costs in payload and launching, says Juan Lawson. It's an interesting question. I have to admit, I've never thought of it. There is a company that has the Queen Bee. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name of the corporation all of a sudden, but the Queen Bee has these nets that's capable of grabbing space junk, and actually, I think they've already talked about using it for that purpose. So yeah. Of course, these satellites do technically belong to other people, so there may be some legal issues there. Stephen Baxter's Titan for a chilling account of an asteroid as a weapon. China diverts one with a nuke, and there's an extinction level event. Well, thank you, Framrick. I appreciate you saying what you just did. Thank you. I'll have to check that out. But yeah, any messing around with asteroids as weapons definitely has the potential of extinction level events. It would be less costly to all national economies, says Ricker, to focus on limiting any use of particle beams for weapons, but instead on peaceful space mining purposes applications. We don't need more dollars wasted on stockpiling. It's true. We spend a ton of money on these weapons, and then we never use them. They result in technological spin-offs sometimes and stuff like that, but it's a lot of money that never gets used. I'd much prefer to see that spent on something more constructive. Asteroid mining, says Secret Knowledge. Yeah, somebody really needs to jump on that. Especially, well, when the Starship becomes operational, asteroid mining is just going to be a no-brainer. If somebody doesn't jump on that and start going after asteroids with the use of the Starship, they are idiots. There's way too much money to be spent on that. So in any event, okay, we have more people typing. Lots of people typing, so bear with me and thank you. By the way, we have 215 people in the audience today. Wow, so far. I think that's a record. So thank you all very much for showing up. If you ever do want to participate, asking questions and that sort of thing, I have it right in the description as to how you can do that. It's pretty easy and it's pretty cheap. You can do it for as little as $3 a month, which basically comes down to 75 cents per episode. And that's to support this channel because frankly, as I've learned very recently, monetization alone does not do it. It just doesn't. So in any event, Deep Space Resources is such a company. Are they still in operation? I was just wondering if they're one of the ones that went bankrupt, but I'm not positive. Can the Soyuz be made reusable, says Guy. I don't know. I think it would take a substantial redesign, but it's possible, and I would say that there's a big incentive for the Russians to make the Soyuz reusable. But I'm not positive. It's in their interest at this point to start making reusable rockets. Dan Bam Bam says the New Hope Mars orbiter really warmed my heart. I keep showing people and they're amazed. I think many news agencies didn't like being shown up. Well, thank you for that. Yes, for me, the Mars orbiter from the UAE is a huge step forward. And it wasn't just a flexing or anything like that on the part of the UAE. I was thrilled to watch it on SpacePod. That was something a lot of us participated in. The launch was completely successful, and it's going to tell us a lot about the Martian weather. And that's going to be a huge plus for the future of our activities on Mars. Understanding the weather and understanding dust storms are going to make a really big difference to our ability to colonize Mars. And it's great to see that the UAE did this. And they've set a great example for the rest of the Middle East, in my opinion. And by the way, if you're interested in that video, it's just a few videos back. It's just called the Mars mission you've never heard of. Okay, Falcon Heavy is getting Artemis contracts as Wormhole Alien. Welcome. And yes, that's true. Quite a few Artemis contracts, and in my last two episodes, actually, I've talked something about how these Artemis contracts seem to indicate that NASA is moving away from the SLS and moving more towards private companies to make Artemis and their future ambitions successful. But my last two episodes, the two-parter that I did, deals with that. Their future plans suggest that that's what they intend to do, at least move away from the SLS, because the original plan was to build the gateway with the SLS. And now they're not going to build any of the gateway with the SLS because it would be incredibly expensive and wasteful. Instead, they're going to use the Falcon Heavy. Or at least it's not official, but that's probably what's going to end up happening. Framrick, when does space junk become general salvage? If you offer to clean up low Earth orbit, is it legal to deorbit dead satellites? You know, I'm not a lawyer, an international lawyer, not sure about that. It makes a lot of sense that it should be general salvage at this point. And I think it's very much in our interest to work together to get rid of space junk out there, because it's just going to continue to become a more and more significant problem. Bits of space junk hit the ISS all the time. You talk to any astronaut that's been on the ISS for a while, and they hear things hitting the exterior. A lot of the older modules on the ISS are just pitted with impacts. So in any event, we should do something about that. Dan Bam Bam, well, yeah, you're welcome. You are quite welcome. I'm very glad to put these shows on. They are fantastic. And by the way, as you may have noticed, at least I think this show is coming to you commercial free today. So I hope that's the case anyway. I think I set it up that way. So in any event, I hope to continue doing this. Just all I can ask, all I can say is thank you for watching, and if you can, and if you are so inclined, please contribute to the channel in any way that you're able to, whether that be through Patreon. I have merchandise such as this shirt, etc., in order to keep these things going, because I'd like to bring these particular episodes to you advertisement free. Okay, deep space agent industries are still trading. Okay, good. Another space nut, thank you. Good to know that they're still around and they're still functional. Okay, Gunkeltron, what do I think about the moon and outer space treaties? Do countries with no low Earth orbit human spaceflight capability, much less beyond LEO, really deserve a say? USA landed on the moon more than 50 years ago. Many countries have larger national budgets than Russia. After all these decades, is it really acceptable that Japan, the EU, UK, Canada, and Australia don't have at least capability matching Russia? I talked a bit about this. I think that that a lot of them should. I'm not as certain about Canada. I don't know what their gross national product is, or Australia. I do know that both of those nations have much smaller populations than the United States. I don't know what their GNP is, but nevertheless, definitely especially the EU and the UK, etc. There should be some sort of manned space program, I think, from these organizations. I think that would be a wonderful thing to see. And certainly, the money's there, the capability is there. I would really like to see that. The ESA has a much lower budget than NASA does, much lower. And I'd like to know why. I mean, the European Union has a huge amount of money. Why is that the case? Personally, Secret of Knowledge says, I think there will be large space docks built where asteroid mining ships will be built that will be capable of mining, smelting, refining, storage, and return to Earth. Love to see that, Seeker of Knowledge. And I think that multiple companies or corporations collaborating to make that happen would be a huge thing. And by the way, all of that is the stated objective of Blue Origin, although I have yet to see anything tangible that they've done to make that happen. But nevertheless, I certainly hope that's the case. Oh, Wormhole Alien points out that, by the way, my budgerigar, I believe as they say in Britain, which we call a parakeet in the United States, but I love budgerigar, loves the theme music. Well, that's great. I'm glad. I like that theme music too. It's just a free thing on my editing program. That's all it is. So let's see here. Framrick points out, hopefully international cooperation to mine, refine, and return, not just a free-for-all. Yeah, that would be nice. I certainly hope that that's the case. It will be a lot, space, as hard as it is, I think it'll be a lot better to see that happen. Juan Lawson, as we have had manned or mannable space stations permanently in orbit since the mid-70s, we have a lot of specialization here. It would appear that NASA is willing to pass this information for commercial usage, although I'm skeptical about the Gateway Foundation's motives. I do like their modular plan. Me too. I think the plan sounds good. I just don't, I'm not as sure about the organization. I definitely need to do something about that. If this could be tied in with NASA, ESA, combined knowledge. Yeah, that huge space station that the Gateway Foundation has in mind is a really great idea. It's just in terms of its doability, and where they're going to get the funding, that sort of thing, it continues to make me wonder. Super Jelly, you're a new contributor. Thank you so much for showing up. Hello from the Mars Society of Philadelphia. Hello. We love what you're up to and appreciate the conversations. Thank you so much. I'm humbled. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm thrilled that you guys are watching, and that you like it. I really enjoy doing what I do. There's no question about that. So in any event, yeah, I would love that. And as a matter of fact, I would love to interview somebody from the Mars Society. So DM me, so that we can possibly discuss that a little bit more in the future. Okay, Framrick, I really wish the UK spent more on space. I don't think nations realize how much space investment pays back tenfold. Oh, thank you for my pronunciation of budgerigar. Well, the reason for that is because one of my best friends lives in London, and he's the one who taught me how to say that, so I can't take credit. But do you think space-based solar power will be viable as a non-carbon source of power? Yeah, I think it should be. I absolutely think it should. And then, yes, I wish the UK spent more on space too. The UK is the fifth largest economy on the planet at this point. The United Kingdom is an economic powerhouse, and a lot of people don't realize that. A lot of people think back to the 1970s with the collapsing British economy and abandoned abandoned UK car factories and stuff like that. That's not the case anymore. The United Kingdom has a massive economy, and I would very much like to see something happen there. The capability's definitely there. So in any event, thank you, Super Jelly. So yeah, hopefully we can get an interview going, and then I'll stream that interview, just so you know. That would be a very exciting thing. If all goes well, says Seeker of Knowledge, space will become a multi-trillion-dollar industry. The potential is there for it to be. So if that's the case, then international cooperation makes sense, because there's a lot of money to be had in cooperation, whereas blowing it all apart in senseless conflict ruins all of that. So I would say that it would make a whole lot more sense for us to do that. Alien Zookeeper says, it occurs to me that the SpaceX launch facility in northern Australia might be a good way to get Australia jumped into the manned space race. Giga Melbourne, Starport Darwin. Yes, those would be fantastic things. There was a horrific typhoon that destroyed Darwin a few decades ago, but I think those things are extremely rare. I think Darwin would be an interesting place for a spaceport. It's a lot closer to the equator, so it makes a hell of a lot of sense. And by the way, for those of you brand new to this, I do tend to cuss sometimes on these things because that's the way I am. So in any event, yeah, I think that would be, that's a great idea. I like that. Another space nut just commented that there could be another Mars Society contributor from China. That would be fantastic. I didn't know there was a Mars Society China. That would be wonderful. So in any event, Framrick, okay. Okay, we kind of lost it after Otol's Saber Skylin is an interesting way forward. But SSTO may never be viable. Yeah, these are all references to things that the British were once involved with. And I hope the UK invests in space factories and technology. Me too. They certainly have the money to do so. Darwin makes more sense than Michigan, says Super Jelly. Yeah, I agree. Michigan is a long ways from the equator and has really lousy weather. But in any event, yeah, I like the idea of an Australian-based spaceport. I think that's a perfect idea, really, and a great way for us to collaborate. Okay, we've got people still typing. Framrick, do you see a decent low Earth orbit lunar Earth economy in the next decade or so? In the next decade or so, I would say probably not that quickly, depending, of course, on how quickly the Starship gets going and how quickly we can mass produce it. I would say perhaps 2 decades to get a full-fledged economy going. I'd like to see it in 10 years. It's possible in 10 years. We could do it in 10 years if we spent the money on it. But I would say probably in the next 20 rather than the next 10, which is wonderful, by the way, because we've been waiting for 50. Okay, there was some, Ricker says there is some, we were talking about Mars, Venus, atmosphere, terraforming, etc., the use of high Tesla field rated magnets. Interesting. Yeah, I'll look that up. Okay. Yeah, I would be very interested in that. I'm interested to see if space applications exist for expanding high Tesla fields, potential for entirely removing gravity effects. My brother would agree with you more than anything. He's a huge Tesla fanatic. I'm from Colorado originally, and Nikolai Tesla did a lot of his experiments in Colorado. Some folks don't know that, but in any event, yeah, I'd say there's a lot of potential involved in Tesla. There's a lot of crazy claims made associated with Tesla sometimes too. So you kind of have to sift through the information to get what's accurate. But nevertheless, yeah, there's a lot of untapped potential with Tesla technology. Okay, moon-based industry, says Seeker of Knowledge, would also be a route to financial gain. Absolutely. Once again, another reason for us to collaborate on these things. It sounds like, most of our effort, even though, the competition is a good thing, but I would say, international collaboration and collaboration between space agencies to help space companies become successful, I would say would be a big way to make this happen. And it's already happening to a degree with NASA, and I think everybody else should follow suit. Since SpaceX can only employ U.S. citizens, says Folato, what does that mean for non-U.S. based SpaceX operations? That's a tough question, Folato. And the whole reason that's brought up is because I believe it's because of military issues that SpaceX is involved in. They're involved in a lot of military applications. Perhaps a spin-off of SpaceX should be created specifically for international operations that have nothing to do with the military. That might be a good way to solve that problem, because I think that does limit SpaceX quite a bit because of that. Now, and I would need a correction. Feel free to correct me on that, but I do believe it's because of SpaceX's heavy involvement with the military that's the case. So a spin-off of that of SpaceX might be good. A separate organization that's dedicated towards international collaboration. Framrick, how do you see us solving the microgravity and radiation issues in low Earth orbit, LLO, lunar exploration? And how far are we with modern materials tech from a space elevator? Wow, that's way off topic. I do try to encourage a little bit of diversity. When it comes to space elevators, I actually have a space elevator expert. He, however, works for Blue Origin, and I need to see whether or not they're going to allow him to interview with me about space elevators. I certainly hope so. So we'll see how that works out. Secret of knowledge, believe it or not, mushrooms have been found to block radiation. How about that? Alien Zookeeper, this is coffee. I need as much caffeine as I can to keep going. Okay. Okay. So yeah, in terms of dealing with radiation, well, the radiation in low Earth orbit is not that significant. The moon is where the problems exist. Now, moon bases, all you have to do is go a little bit beneath the surface, and that takes care of the problem. As far as the Lunar Gateway is concerned, that's where we need to develop new technologies to protect astronauts from cosmic rays and space radiation, because they're going to be taking the full brunt of it. And that's one of the main reasons that the gateway was conceptualized, is for us to figure out ways of protecting human beings from the rigors of interplanetary space. So in any event, that's where we're going to be testing our counter radiation technologies. But in low Earth orbit, it's not too much of a problem. There is some, certainly, radiation in low Earth orbit for people who spend a lot of time there. But nevertheless, it's not a huge problem for folks who spend a couple of years. Framrick, how do we move from the current professional astronaut regime to Joe Public being able to go and cooperate in space? Very good question. I think a little bit of training is always required, and I think that we need to have more and more companies involved in some training. But nevertheless, if we're just talking about operating in microgravity, and folks have at least a little bit of training in terms of how to operate in microgravity and how not to touch anything except the things that they're supposed to touch. But yeah, I would say a much larger and much more robust system of training on how to operate in microgravity, and especially in terms of training on how to operate during spacewalks, that regards a lot of training. That's going to require a whole industry in itself. So in any event, and by the way, that's already gotten started. So let's hope that it expands considerably. Juan Lawson, with the cost of getting things into orbit and the cost of getting things back to Earth. Ooh, we just had a lot of comments. Bear with me for just one moment. Let me get back to that one. Do you think that space resources should remain mainly in space, or for forward use somewhere else in the solar system? Any precious materials mined in the abundance on asteroids could seriously destabilize Earth-based economies. It's hard to say. I think that space resources should be used. That's a good question. Any precious materials mined in abundance on asteroids? It could, if it's done incorrectly. However, if those precious materials are released in a controlled manner, in the same way that OPEC controls the oil and how much oil they release, if it's done intelligently, then a lot of money can be made off of that. So I would say that asteroid exploitation, as long as there's some sort of regulation associated with it, and I hate to regulate anything, but I think it's kind of necessary. I think that bringing the stuff back to Earth is useful as long as we keep it under control. But that can be done. OPEC's been doing it for a long time, and I think other companies can do the same thing. Framrick, Elon Musk, Boring Company, tunnels on the moon, Tesla Energy, solar power, SpaceX getting us there. Yes, that's true. SpaceX has the capability, theoretically, of doing it all. However, it's not necessarily the case that he wants to. And I think that's why he's collaborating so much on Artemis, is because I think Elon wants the collaboration of NASA and other organizations to help him get to Mars. Dan Bam Bam, love you too. So I guess you'll be listening. Cheers to you as well. And we'll see you again soon. Gunkeltron, after Starship is launching, I wonder if SpaceX will consider licensing or selling, leasing Falcon 9 Dragon to other companies or countries. It'd make a lot of sense, to do that. We'll see. It depends on how protective they are of it. But it does make a great deal of sense to do that, especially when Starship's in operation. Okay, Alien Zookeeper, just a response. The space resources are the most valuable in space. There's no benefit in bringing them back, says Alien Zookeeper, unless it's gold or something. Platinum is one of those things. A lot of folks don't know 95% of the platinum on Earth comes from South Africa. That's it. And it's also very hard to exploit in South Africa. Plus, the situation in South Africa is not necessarily completely stable. It seems to be, but their democracy is still fairly young. So that's one thing, is that platinum is important to our operations here on Earth. And there's only so much of it left, even. So there are some things that can be mined in space that has a lot of use on Earth. But yeah, the majority of it can be used in space. I agree, and to a great extent. Full Auto says military connection is tangential. I think the real issue is that they're necessarily licensed as a munitions manufacturer, because rockets are or could be arguably weapons. I think the U.S. law requires that munitions manufacturers only hire U.S. citizens. Interesting. I'm not sure what the situation is with that. It'd be interesting to look that up. I'd still like to see a spin-off of some kind, employing folks from elsewhere. Yes, Framrick, we did talk, there was a mention at the beginning of the conversation about how this could be like an Antarctic base on the moon with professional scientists and engineers, multiple bases, that sort of thing, collaborating, let's hope, instead of competing or shooting, that sort of thing. That would, I think it seems like we've been mostly in agreement that any sort of conflict in space would be a big negative thing for all involved. So hopefully that's not the case. I think if they're multinational corporations, says secret knowledge of space resources will be spread out, not destabilizing Earth-based economy. Think of diamonds. They're in abundance but stored in vaults, and only so many are released in each year to keep the value up. Yeah, that is the case, and that could very much be done, if done intelligently, by anybody who mines asteroids. They can make themselves very rich as long as they do things right, and I think that anybody who mines an asteroid is going to be smart about it. Framrick, what's the chance of bringing back a near-Earth asteroid as an international effort? I don't know what the chance is, but I think that's a great idea, as long as you're really careful about that asteroid and what you do with it. But yeah, there's been a lot of plans, and the technology certainly exists. There's a lot of near-Earth asteroids, some of which are incredibly valuable, that could be brought back, useful in terms of propellant depots for deep space exploration, raw materials, all kinds of things. Bringing back a near-Earth asteroid would be a wonderful multinational collaboration. Are we going to do it? I don't know. Let's hope we do. But I think that's a hell of an idea. Okay, Alien Zookeeper. The only thing I can think of that might be of importance is the useful bulk materials. I think we're running short on phosphorus and fertilizer, decades after for precious metals. Yes, like I say, platinum. If something happens in South Africa, to make platinum difficult or inaccessible, that could be a real problem, and would require possibly military intervention in order to get the platinum that we need. And it would be nice if we had another source and we didn't have to worry about something like that. Ricker says, I think a YouTube exists about small reptiles safely floating alive and fine in the center of an E-magnet with a high-strength magnetic field. If this somehow is connected with reducing, diverting, isolating mass effects, then perhaps this effect could be leveraged at reducing E-drive power required on moving huge payloads and trip durations needed to go interplanetary. Ricker, very interesting points. Off topic, and sometimes folks do, and that's fine, no problem. But that's more of a that's kind of a next generation propulsion topic, which I will put on the everybody remind me, by the way, but I'm going to put that as a topic for discussion to be voted on. So maybe we can talk about that in the future. Okay, GameStrum, I think you're a brand new competition as well. Did you see the season 2 trailer for All Mankind? I hope we don't end up where we're enemies such as China putting weapons, or we put weapons on the moon or in space. No, I did not, but I am going to. GameStrum, can you please let me know where that is? Where is For All Mankind? Is that Netflix or what is that? But I'd be very interested in seeing it. Okay, Framrick, do you think nations will share the best space tech, life support, shielding, propulsion, or will there still be keep it to yourself for many years? I think when it comes to life support, radiation shielding, that's something that will be shared. When it comes to propulsion, if it's nuclear, that may not be shared. I don't know. I certainly hope that it is. But once again, when we're talking about anything involving nuclear power, nuclear thermal propulsion, that sort of thing, the United States and other countries have been jealous about guarding that sort of technology. So we'll see how that. TransAstra on mining, still around, have test equipment on ISS, and have profitable partner companies. That's a good thing. So it's on Apple TV, says GameStrum. So on Apple TV is For All Mankind. Well, heck, now I'm going to have to be spending my limited resources on another channel, but oh well. I don't have conventional TV, so why not? So in any event, that's good. That's great about TransAstra. And there's a company called Momentous. That's giving me some ideas. Perhaps I need to have an entire episode on space corporations and what they're up to. Okay, so let's have some more contribution, because we have roughly about 20 minutes, perhaps a little bit less in the conversation. Time's been flying by, as it always is. Okay, we have a number of people typing here. So in any event, once again, we have 222 people watching. Thank you so much for participating. If you want, or for watching, if you want to be an active participant, it's in the description on how to do it. Being a Patreon member and a member of the Discord server is as little as $3 a month. Very cheap, and then you can participate actively in this, or you can just watch, subscribe, whatever. But this channel is a young channel. It is now my full-time job, and all the support I can get is what's going to keep this going. So if there's any way that you can support in any regard, I'd be very grateful. So in any event, okay. Juan Lawson brought up your point about platinum is a good one. Platinum is used in all modern day catalytic converters. Very true. If we had more platinum, we could fit it into bigger machines, ships, heavy industry, even static-based converters for atmospheric gases, terraforming the Earth back to health. Yes, that's been talked about. It's also used in a lot of medical equipment. It's vital for all of that. Every year for the last several years, the demand for platinum actually has outstripped the production. And that's not because we've just been lazy about producing it. It's because the platinum in South Africa is so damn hard to get at. And so we never have the amount of platinum that we need. So in any event, the Gateway Foundation. We keep talking about that. I promise, I'm going to do an episode about the Gateway Foundation sometime in the next couple of weeks. I've got so many things on my docket, but in any event, I will do something about that. I need to investigate them some more before I give a complete and comprehensive opinion on them. I'm not sure yet as to whether or not they're for real and how realistic their objectives are. But what they talk about is awesome. So in terms of their space station, so we shall see. Yeah, Super Jelly, I don't know if it's hype or if it's something else. I want to look into it more. Full Auto says expecting other space agencies to cooperate towards grand goals like SpaceX going to Mars in a productive versus political way is unrealistic. It's like painting the Mona Lisa by committee. Yeah, you could very well be right. It's a tough thing. It's a tough thing. However, the ISS is a fantastic example of multinational, multi-agency collaboration. A lot of folks disagree, but I call that a huge success. A 20-year success, very expensive, but nevertheless, a lot's been accomplished with it. I love the doggone thing. And that is a big example of multinational success. But yeah, it is tough. And yeah, to paint the Mona Lisa by committee, yeah, that's impossible. So yeah, multinational collaboration is very difficult. I won't disagree with you there, Full Auto. But impossible, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm just an idealist, but I like to think that we can do it. Okay, Seeker of Knowledge is doing typing in right now. We still got 14 minutes left, so we still got a little time. How about that? Great. So everybody participating, let's keep it going. Governments and ideologies keep getting in the way, says Seeker of Knowledge. Yes, I completely agree. I completely agree. Because when it comes down to it, cosmonauts, astronauts, even taikonauts, if the NASA astronauts who have cooperated with them, according to what they've said, all of them have similar views and similar motivations and have collaborated very well. And it's not that. It's the governments that create the problems. And this has always been the issue. So let's hope that this doesn't continue to be a problem. We have more people typing, so that's a great thing. Who does the Starship model? Yeah, I was going to mention this. This is done by Spaceship Mania, and it is in the description of just about all of my videos. You get a 10% discount if you use the code ANGRY10. By the way, they don't just make that. Here we go. It's huge. It's huge. But there's my Crew Dragon. So any event, but that's a 3D model. If you don't have a 3D printer, then there's a fellow who can help you out there as well. And he's also in the description of a lot of my recent videos, Finger Blaster Studios. So in any event, keep that in mind. He is looking to do the printing for us on these sorts of things. So in any event, but remember Angry 10. Wormhole Alien points out astronomers getting annoyed with SpaceX because of Starlink. Yeah, they are. Let's hope that some of these methods used to cloak the Starlink satellites are going to make a difference because astronomy, even amateur astronomy right now is important. Amateur astronomers look for new asteroids that represent a danger to our planet. So, it's not just looking at pretty pictures. It has a practical value. Already 495. I think you're brand new as well. Welcome, welcome. Can you do a collaboration video with Isaac Arthur? That's up to him. I'll say right now that I would like to. I'll reach out to him unless somebody else knows him better than I do, because I don't know him at all. I think he does fantastic work. He does stuff that's more futuristic in nature, a lot of it anyway, and I think it's magnificent, the stuff that he does. I get a lot of information about my futuristic ideas from Isaac Arthur, and I would love to do something collaborative with him. So if somebody has any connections with him, the offer is out there. Okay, Rickard, Vanta Black on future Starlink should help. Let's hope. Let's hope that that method, or some method, works with Starlink and gets rid of this problem with tons of. Although I think it would be an amazing thing to go out at night and see tons of satellites zooming around the sky all the time. That would look cool, but that's about it. It would ruin a lot of really good astronomy. Okay, let's see here. Okay. Framrick says, do you think non-spacefaring nations, African nations, Middle East, South America will be able to access space with collaboration with SpaceX and other providers? Well, the UAE has proven that they're capable of doing it. And frankly, if African nations can get their crap together, and that's rude, but it's true. So much chaos in terms of their governments, in terms of everything else going on, they would be a perfect place to build a spaceport. Nations like Kenya are right on the equator. These are perfect places to build spaceports. There just needs to be more political stability in these areas, and they could make themselves a ton of money. So yes, let's hope that they could do this. I would love to see it happen. I would be delighted to see these African nations become so much wealthier, so much more prosperous for the benefit of themselves and their people. I would love to see that. They just need to get it together so that any spaceport knows that they're going to be safe, that they're going to have consistent support. That's the one thing holding things back. And there's a lot of terrorist activity in these nations, in Nigeria, even in Kenya, unfortunately. Used to be one of the coolest countries to visit in the world, but unfortunately there's more terrorist activity there now, making it more dangerous. It's sad. Let's hope, fingers crossed, let's hope that something changes in that regard. Full auto. I think one promising way to leverage the skills and talents of other space agencies is soliciting ideas like NASA did with their Space Poop Challenge. Nobody, not even Elon Musk, has a monopoly on good ideas. I agree. And NASA, by the way, does this all the time. They have contest after contest after contest for new concepts, new ideas, especially Mars. All kinds of habitation structures that are radiation resistant, that are self-sustaining. They've done so many. The Martia, the Martian ice house, tons of concepts are as a result of competitive contests, sponsored by NASA, and let's hope sponsored by everybody else. Let's all these agencies jump in and do the same thing. Offer cash prizes to folks who come up with that. And already $4.95, you're welcome. You're welcome. Ricker, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. As far as live stream is concerned, coverage, we'll see. I'm new to a lot of this, so I want to make sure that I do it right. So yeah, we'll see on that. Framrick, is movement to a rotating space station to eliminate zero or microgravity worth it? Yes, I think it is. However, it needs to be a huge space station, in my opinion. It's been proven, well, at least the indication seems very strong, that the smaller the station, the more the artificial gravity messes people up. You turn your head, you get disoriented. You drop things, it diverts by a small amount. Artificial gravity created by rotating space stations does have problems. The larger the station, the better. And of course, these huge, the cylinders, for example, the O'Neill cylinders, are the perfect example of how the biggest way to do that. And that you'd be talking about a multinational collaboration for sure, because these things are huge. They're kilometers long and kilometers wide. I don't see how you build something like that without a multinational collaboration. If we want to create artificial gravity, stuff that's really practical, we're going to have to build a really big station, and that's going to definitely going to require a lot of multinational collaboration. Space observatories financed by SpaceX as Wormhole Alien. Yeah, that could be one solution. Let's get above low Earth orbit and fund space observatories. However, amateur astronomers continue to collaborate in a huge way to the safety of this planet. And so far, our nations do not seem to be willing to invest enough money in keeping an eye on everything that might be a danger to us. So until we have, comprehensive coverage of the whole damn sky, it is dangerous for the future of our species to eliminate or obstruct the amateur astronomers' ability to observe the cosmos. Do a live stream on the 20-kilometer hop, says Framrick. Well, actually, I have an idea, not a plan, but an idea of actually going to Boca Chica and watching the 20-kilometer hop and filming it. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. It's certainly going to require funds and that sort of thing, so we'll see how my company is doing by the time that happens. But nevertheless, that's what I have in mind, is to go to Boca Chica and film it. But it won't be as good, though, as Boca Chica Gal and the others who are out there. They are way better than I could ever be. But nevertheless, that is my plan, is to go there. Seeker of Knowledge, have you seen the movie Valerian, The City of a Thousand Planets? I have. Everybody else hated that movie. I loved it. I thought that was cool. But in any event, Mon Lawson, we would need to get the speed right so as not to cause nausea and disorientation. The Gateway station, they were quoting less than 1.9 revolutions, or rather rotations per minute. Yes, that's true. It is a fine art, and so far we haven't. I like Spaceport Ethiopia, front on the Indian Ocean. Yes, Ethiopia would be another possibility. Why not? Why not? The problem is, of course, government's instability, terrorist activity, that sort of thing. It seems to be something that plagues a lot of African nations. And let's hope that this changes as time goes on, because they have a lot of money that they could make and totally change the future of their countries if they were to offer their countries as locations for spaceports. God, I hope they do it. It would mean everything to the African people to change that. Okay, are sea-launched platforms inherently better than land-launched, says Framrick. That is debatable. One thing about sea-launched platforms, of course, is, you can build a ton of them. There's no people around, that sort of thing. One thing that has been brought up, however, is if we launch Starship off of a oil platform or something similar to that. This was something that was just brought up. The amount of sound that that's going to create, the vibrations that that's going to create throughout the ocean may result in an environmental catastrophe. We could see a lot of dead fish from something this powerful taking off from an oil platform. I don't know. Nobody's ever talked about this. And if we have an environmental catastrophe with a ton of dead sea animals as a result of the first launch, that could be bad news for SpaceX's ambitions. I don't know. Once again, I'm not an expert on this stuff, but it has been brought up, and that is an interesting question. What will happen? Because the Starship is going to have nearly double the thrust of the takeoff power of the Saturn V. That sound is going to be unlike anything, that people have experienced. So we definitely need to keep that in mind. Framrick talking about artificial gravity a bit more. Yes, diameter, revolution speed, etc. All of that is really important, and we really need to at least start experimenting with it. I believe somebody just commented about tethering two starships together. That's been talked about a lot. I would say a long tether does make the most sense. That has been suggested, or some sort of truss to create artificial gravity. Once again, I think it would require some experimentation to see what kind of effect that would have on our equilibrium and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's definitely worth trying. Perfect gravity wave generators, which have been patented by DARPA. Interesting, says Seeker of Knowledge. Gravity wave generators. I would like to learn more about that. If you can toss a link on those, I'm not as familiar with that. I would love to see it. Okay, sorry, oh, wow. We have burned through time, so I'm going to quickly burn through the rest of these, but I'm willing to go a few minutes over, as I frequently am. Full auto, a great rotating station prototyping web tool is called SpinCalc. SpinCalc Artificial Gravity. Okay, thank you for that. If you could throw a link of that on there, I would be thrilled. Any links on the questions and answer thing, definitely get placed. Bring your bug repellent. Yeah, we need to watch out for those aliens, says Warhawk. Okay, Juan Lawson, lunar sim gravity and Mars sim gravity. Yeah, the lower the gravity we try to simulate, the easier it's going to be. Okay, so yeah, all right, we got, again, lunar, Mars, gravity, etc. Yeah, we'll see what goes on. Warhawk has actually been to Boca Chica. So in any event, and he made a comment that he'd like to go back. I'd love to see you there again, man. So in any event, I've never been to Boca Chica, and I'd love to see what's going on. So we'll see what goes on in that regard. 20-kilometer space nerd team up in Boca Chica. Yes. Whales and dolphins shock from rocket launches, fish kill, etc. Okay, this is going to have to wrap it up at this point. These last comments, I'm sorry. However, I do this every Sunday. So in any event, if you folks want to, come back, just, keep an eye on my channel. I have a lot of content, keep in mind, a ton of videos on there. So please have a look at those. Thank you so much for participating, but I'm going to talk a little bit about these last comments. Okay, the link was just placed on the SpinCalc Artificial Gravity, so that is there on the questions and answer thing on Discord. So SpinCalc is what it is called. Gwen Shotwell, CEO of SpaceX, showed the concept of commercial starhopper, public transportation, sending people anywhere, point on Earth in minutes. Seems like Jeff Bezos should now concede and put his wallet back into his pocket and book SpaceX to do Amazon bulk product delivery. Okay, GameStrum just said, just running the numbers on using the Starship to launch the mass of an O'Neill cylinder into low Earth orbit.
would require at $2 million a launch when fully reused and mass produced. It would cost 36.8 billion dollars just to get the mass into orbit. That's nearly $1 trillion just to get the mass into space for an O'Neill cylinder. Add building the things, it'd probably be another trillion. Definitely would need international collaboration. You're absolutely right. And the link on the high frequency gravitational wave generator just got put up. So in any event, another space nut just wanted to say that we have new merch coming later today. Boy, I'm excited about that. So keep an eye on my channel. And Warhawk just measured the dog for an angry astronaut dog sweater. How about that? I didn't even know one of those existed. By the way, my volunteers, wow, you guys do such an incredible job for me. Thank you so much for everything that you do. So in any event, I am going to wrap up at this point. Thank you so much, everybody, for being a part of this. Keep your eye on my channel every Sunday. Sometime I change the times a little bit to try to accommodate people in other parts of the world. But nevertheless, it's usually ended up at about this time. But I will be thrilled to see you folks in the future. In the meantime, if you want to be an active participant, like I've said before, go to the description. You can see how to do it. It's been wonderful. So thank you so much for participating. And you folks have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, stay angry about space.